everybody, welcome back to Dead by Daylight. Now, this isn't a dailies by daylight, so to speak. This is actually just sort of a little experimental thing that I'm going to try and, demonstrate exactly what is my thinking. So, as you've noticed in the last few Dead by Daylight videos, I have experienced some considerable frame drops every now and then. And through additional play, I've noticed there is a distinct pattern in exactly when these happen, and it's a little weird, because it makes no sense if you know the slightest thing about how this stuff works. So we're just going to hop into a game here as a trapper, which is not my best kind of killer in the slightest bit, but nonetheless we managed to get a game eventually. And up in the top right there, you can now see that I have zoomed in on the Steam built-in FPS tracker, which allows to have a decent idea of when things are going to go a little bit finicky wonky here. So escape cake, sealed envelope, and fragrant Sweet William. Better than a fragrant Prince William, I suppose, but nonetheless. So, generally speaking, when you see an FPS drop, it's because the CPU is having to do more than it would normally. So we're seeing a bunch of FPS drops in the course of this loading screen, which makes sense. We have to send a whole ton of packets to make sure everyone's on the right page. We're setting up hosting because we're the killer. We're determining what map we're going to be on. We're doing a whole ton of really CPU-intensive kind of things that should make sure that our FPS is going to go down quite a bit. So it's going to fluctuate quite a bit here, and that's normal. We expect that. There's a lot of data being shuffled around, a lot of data being received and sent, so that makes perfect sense. What tends to be the case, and we'll see this more as we go into the actual video here, is that a lot of my FPS drops happen for the most minor things, the most tiny little adjustments of things. Because here we are, in-game, we're sitting at a nice, comfortable 60 FPS, which is what we tend to idle at for the most part this entire video. And then we see a little bit of a wobble there as just we load up the UI, and things are pretty comfortable. We're sitting at 60 FPS, nothing's really happening, and more or less the first thing that we notice is going to cause one of these changes is when the UI changes. Now, that doesn't make terribly much sense for the sheer basis that the UI is extremely light, or it should be, at the very least. You have a set list of icons, so we've got the icons for the survivors at the bottom left there, we've got the icons for my perk on the bottom right, we've got the little set trap marker in front of us, all that. All of those are just icons, they're pictures, and they're loaded into memory when the game starts up, so that the game just has them on hand to deploy as is. So as you see there, we dropped to by about 3 FPS there, as the icon for Claudette managed to drop a bit. And mostly, the game is only interested in whether these icons are on or off. They're Boolean in nature. Now, there's a little bit of a setting on whether or not we have one in a particular array. For instance, there's 3 different icons based on survivor health. There is healthy, injured, as we see there, and on the ground. There's also a potential one for hooked as well, so we can say those 4. Plus, there's a few more modifiers, such as whether they have no liver and therefore can't be healed, whether they are asleep, whether they are going mad, if you remember the doctor, whether they are the obsession is a fairly common one. But for the most part, a lot of these things don't really care about each other. But the weird thing is, despite the fact that this is functionally a series of booleans, a series of, which you could probably mostly approximate with 1 or 2 bytes, I haven't done the exact figures, but suffice to say this number could be quite low. Despite that, whenever I have a huge frame drop in the course of playing Dead by Daylight, it's usually right as some visual element is kicking in. Now you might wonder, okay, why would that be happening? Is it because it's doing something on your end? And the answer is yes and no. The game state is being held as a server on my side. Now, I do have these problems in Survivor as well, so it's not to say that it's just that, but stay with me. The game state, that is to say, the map, the props in it, all of the generators, everyone running around, all of that is being held as a server on my end of things. So I'm holding that, but all of the game calculations, however, should be happening client side. Now, the game itself is going to be doing a bunch of stuff here, and yes, this is an incredibly sneaky place to put a trap, but I don't play Trapper very often, so I was surprised that it even worked. what the game state should do is say, okay, given this selection of numbers, then when I try to do this thing, this will happen. So we'll have a client-side vision of what's happening, and the server itself, which is contained inside my machine, it has to be said, will be crunching the numbers as things take over. So it will know, for instance, what my progress is on a given bar. It will know, for instance, how far through completing a generator I am, because these are values that necessarily have to be conveyed to everyone. So there we go, there's one big change there. So there's an icon change, and another one there. So 2 icon changes, and twice it halved our FPS. No one keep down here. Oh, what do you know? So, if we have this client vision, which is an approximation, it's a best guess kind of situation as to what is actually happening on the server. Whereas the server has definite information but doesn't actually render anything. So what we should be seeing is that when we have such a graphical change, basically nothing has to actually change. The data is only receiving more or less a byte or an integer value, which is extremely small. So we shouldn't actually see anything CPU intensive happen. If it's trying to load up a different icon, it would make sense that it would do that maybe once. It shouldn't have to be loading up a single icon, so I don't actually know why it's doing this. It's very strange, and that's why I thought I'd make a video on this. This is definitely on the nerdier side of things I could be making videos on with regards to Dead by Daylight, but nonetheless, this feels like an interesting little thing that I discovered in the course of trying to figure out why my videos were having these recurrent problems. And to get a little bit more into the nitty-gritty of that, I record the video, and then I record my audio, as well as the audio of anyone I haven't been playing with, if I'm doing a survivor run, all in their own distinct tracks. And what happens every single time so far is that my audio and my companion's audios perfectly in sync, no problem. But because the video, the actual game video, sees this strange weirdness of FPS plummets occasionally, what's happening in the video sort of gradually stutters and gets out of sync with everything else. So you'll hear me and my friends being perfectly coordinated and in sync, but you'll see us reacting too early or too late to something. Frequently it's too late, but either way. And it's because the video desyncs because of these FPS changes. Now where has everybody gone? A little bit of quirk there. Don't quite know. Again, I don't have 100% knowledge of what's happening here, but so there are occasions where the FPS drops precipitously and nothing seems to be happening on our end. But that might be indicative of there being something happening under the hood that's causing these issues, and it just happens to align with the UI change a lot of the time. But, nonetheless, there we go again. So again, I don't know what's going on here. Now, my machine is perfectly capable of running this game. Now, this game is full of bugs. It's fair to say, but Elemental is the highest spec machine I have ever owned by a considerable margin, and yet seems to have this problem. Don't quite understand. So as I say, the most plausible explanation that I have for this is that there is something very, very, very heavy happening with certain UI changes. Now this might be that it is actually having to load up the icon, it's having to load up a relatively large PNG file every single time there's a change in the UI, and that might cause a bit of CPU spike. But that wouldn't make any sense, because you'd have to do that basically every time you were trying to change the UI. It would be way too heavy. That's not the kind of thing that you would generally do in more or less any context. You would load up all the icons and you just have them sitting in memory and RAM. But what seems to happen is that we change the UI, there's a CPU spike, which tells me there's something going on under the UI that is doing something considerably more intensive than it needs to. And yes, I'm being a little merciless here, and I'm totally abusing the trap at the top of the stairs. But oh well, it's fine. I was doing this mostly for a daily and also for research purposes. So, don't at me. Come on, pull it. There we go. Now obviously, I don't have access to the code. If I did have access to the code, it would probably be legally. So, consequently, I can't really say with certainty what is or isn't the source of these issues. They don't appear to be, as near as I'm aware, they don't appear to be common. I don't see a whole bunch of people complaining about desync. I don't see a whole bunch of people complaining about sudden FPS drops. I see a lot of people complaining about bugs. That much I can certainly say with certainty. But I don't see a lot of distinct talk about what kind of like FPS changes people see and what the causes of these FPS changes might be. It's not camping if they escaped whilst I was leaving. I swear. But I have a non-zero amount of education and awareness and whatnot about how game systems work, so I might toss in my my 2 penny here. Now, where's everybody else? I genuinely have not the slightest clue. Mind you, I recorded this footage quite a while ago at this stage, so, you know, my memory is not necessarily very likely to be great on what the game state was at a given moment. There we go, there's another drop considerably. Exactly what caused it, I don't know, but that's an occasion where there wasn't a visible, at least, UI change, and we had a significant drop in FPS. So it's sort of just very interesting to sit back and just watch this footage play out and see where the FPS drops happen and what was happening, at least to our side of things, on that particular moment. Because that was after Meg had, well, either Meg or Claudette had entered into struggle phase. It was nothing happening, as near as we could tell. No one that we knew of was doing anything with generators. Just seemed to be that something strange was happening there. But more often than not, there is some element of UI change that directly corresponds to huge FPS drops for me. We might see that again in a moment or two. Oh, and here I get greedy. Here I get greedy and think that I can get her all the way to the basement and forget that I've left that unavoidable trap at the top. Thereby freeing her. Don't quite realize this at first. I don't play Trapper very much. Where did she go? Heck if I remember. But yes, that was me getting greedy a little bit, thinking I could take them all to the basement and just tunnel them straight through that one extremely tricky trap spot, where you can barely even, if at all, see the trap, much less interact with it. Maybe that's a bug to be worked out later. I do admit I am completely abusing that, so apologies to the survivors involved here. Okay, she's healed up again. We didn't see an FPS drop there, but we do find the hatch, which has been opened for some time by this point. Yeah, and this is of course not the PTB, nor is this a version on the PTB or in reality that can close the hatch. So for me, it's just a matter of, are there enough traps around for me to actually seal this thing, and do they know where they are? My ultimate determination is I have no idea where they are. Where's a high spot near the thing? Oh look, convenient high spot. So now I'm just looking around for a shock of blue hair in the distance. There isn't really any distinct benefit or loss to particular cosmetics in Dead by Daylight. There's nothing that's strictly better than one another, but it's sort of a degree of camouflage. If you want to be, if you want to be getting up in the face of the killer a bunch, you usually dress in bright colors because they'll be seen from a mile away. Whereas if you want to hide, especially if you're playing Claudette who has a lot of earth tones, you dress in sort of like mud, grays, dark kind of colors. I frequently go around as Meg in just like a black jacket because it works so well. And I think we spotted our target. Yep, there they are. Chocolate pink, my mistake. Pink purple. She's heading for the hatch, which worried me. And then she splits off away from him. Whether she actually even knew that hatch was there, I have no idea. I have no idea. But anyways, let me know in the comments if you experience issues that are similar to this, if you've played Dead by Daylight and you've had persistent issues with FPSs just dropping whenever there's a UI change. Let me know if you've had other problems that have resulted in FPS changes like this, and if there's any consistency to them, perhaps we can try and work together and figure out what on earth is going on. But as a mod developer, I find it very helpful when people put my stuff into videos and encounter bugs, because it's one thing to have a crash report, it's one thing to have an error log, or a console readout. It's another thing to actually have video content of the bugs, so you can say with certainty, ah yes, this is the exact game state that was happening at the time, and this is the bug that happened. Of course, it's not always 100% possible, and it does require somebody in the end-user kind of level actually encountering a bug, and that's kind of the thing you want to try and avoid as an ideal. You want to encounter the bugs during development, not when they've actually reached consumers and such. Ah, handy hook. And there's another drop right there. Ooh, that was a big one. There we go. That's coffee. And there we have it. So is there another FPS drop waiting for us there? Yeah, a little bit there. But now we're actually entering a different state. A whole ton of FPS gone there, just by sheer virtue of the fact that we're changing state. We're dropping a lot of the server, a whole bunch of stuff is actually happening. And credit to those survivors, I was not a little bit, I did not show very much in the way of mercy to them, but, oh well. Some of them were a little bit less appreciative of my experimentation than others. But I hope you've all enjoyed this little investigation into exactly how I keep encountering these weird FPS issues and why they keep affecting my videos. And it does happen when I'm not filming as well. It doesn't seem to pop up as often as when I'm filming, but when I'm filming there was a slight FPS, there's a slight CPU load by sheer virtue of the fact that I've got Bandicam up and I'm recording things and doing audio and that kind of thing. But for the most part, it is fairly consistent, and I don't generally know what's going on with it all, but yeah, oh well. And yeah, hope you all enjoyed. I'll catch you all next time.